All right. When I was in high school, I didn't like to do book reports. I didn't like to read. I have like dyslexia and ADD. It wasn't really something I liked to do. And you almost had to put a gun to my head to get me to do a book report. Well, anyway, I get out of high school and years go by and computers come out. And I'm reading on the groups. I had a bulletin board system. And at night they would send files between computers like FidoNet and different other nets. And in those conferences, you would see someone say, I can't get a second hard drive to work on my computer. And then, of course, all the big mouths show up. They're out there. They've always been out there. You just plug it in. There's nothing to it. So I had extra hard drives, and I went and tried it. It didn't work with my motherboard. You just plug it in there. It'll work. Well, it doesn't. So I start reading around as much as I could. And I found out that the second hard drive on a lot of motherboards has to be low-level formatted, but no system files. And all you do is plug it in and it works. Okay? So I started helping people. So finally it got so annoying that I decided to write a text file, step by step, telling them what the cable looked like. You know, there was one without a twist, with a twist. There was ones with terminating resistors. You just plug it in. You're wrong. You got different cables. You got different terminating resistors. Some needed a terminating resistor. So anyway, I did this file. It was called 2 hard drives. And I zipped it. It was a text file. Put it up on the, back then it wasn't the internet. It was bulletin board systems. And it would get placed in with the shareware files. And somebody would, and it had a description. It would say, are you having trouble putting a second hard drive on your system? Read this file. And people would actually track me down and thank me for it. So I wrote something and other people thanked me for it. So that was the first step. Now I'm in the electronic barn over in Bloomfield, and we're talking about the crappy projects in magazines. And they were saying they're garbage. And I said, well, what I'm doing right now is, that serial parallel board in an AT computer? Yeah. I said, there's an extra UART socket on that board. And I said, you can put signals right in there. And you just set the computer for that address or your basic program. And you can send signals in and out of that UART socket. Now let me show you what one of those boards looks like. Here it is here. Okay, this was a very common board. This is your parallel port, and then there was a header that came off a wire off these pins, and then you would mount that alongside this in the computer for your serial ports. So under here there's a UART socket. There's a UART socket here and UART, but there's an empty one, and that's where this goes. Now this is a high-end facsimile board for taking fax pictures from off a shortwave radio and putting it into the computer with a special program. It worked with JV fax. It worked with Dallas fax. So I'm building this kind of stuff, and someone says to me at the barn, well, why don't you submit one of your ideas to a magazine? I started looking into it, and there was no information at all. And finally, I was reading somebody's story. They were a writer, and they were saying, yeah, the buzzword is a writer's kit. And I'm like, a writer's kit? And the guy quickly mentioned that whenever you contact a magazine, you ask them for a writer's kit first. And that's the buzzword. Now, a writer's kit, all it is a piece of paper, and it tells you the format they want the pictures submitted at, the text, and they tell you how they want it. And in those days, it was right on the brink of, they were computerizing. So they wanted plain text, ASCII. I think the delimiter code or something it is, it's missing carriage returns. So anyway, it makes it easier for them to edit. So I did articles, and I start passing them around, and you get your rejections, you get your rejection letters, but you have to have the writer's kit first, and then they sort of know who you are, and then the project can go on a slush pile. It can sit there for 3 years, and then one day they contact you, and they tell you basically, we're going to pay you this much, we're doing you a favor, and I'm like, nah, ain't going to work that way. So I realized my articles were on slush piles. I kept submitting to different people. Now, I submitted to this company, and the guy says, you got to call this guy's number up and talk to him. He wants to talk to you. So I called the guy up, and he didn't understand what the hell I was doing. Then I realized he's like 80 years old, and I kept telling him, and here it is. Build a quick and dirty data interface. Let's see if this on this correct. Okay, this is the magazine article that I got published. Now, this was the beginning of this. I explained you got the UART, the empty UART socket, and you can put others, get your power and everything right off the board. The whole header plugs into the UART socket. The very basic ones, it's just a header with pins, and you when you're done, you unplug it from the UART socket. You can make lights go on and off, similar to stuff that you could do out the back port of a Timex Sinclair. All right, but you didn't have to buy a board. The board was already sitting in your computer. All right, and it was just it. Now that's how I am. I try to, what's the saying? You can't make chicken soup out of chicken shit. But or you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Well, I'm that kind of minimalistic guy. Well, what can I make? What can I learn? So I got published, okay? And I got $150 per page. And they cut the pages down on me. So I called the guy up and I talked to him. And he gave me a little bit more money. He says, he goes, you're new to this. And yeah, we edit down. And I said, you put mistakes in it. Yeah, that happens. And then he explained to me, he says, and there's also, that computer craft became microcomputer. I have another article on this one. But anyway, he explained to me, magazines make their money from advertising, okay? You open any page, you're going to see advertisements. That's where the real money comes from. Selling the magazine a subscription to the public, that only pays for the shipping to the public, okay? So that's why when you have a subscription to a magazine, they really lower it. They just want to get that magazine to you at any cost, because they're making money from the ads. Now, anywhere you open a magazine up, there's going to be an ad, okay? That's how they make their money. Almost every page has an ad. And you're like, wow, they got a lot of ads in there. Well, that's how they make their money. All right? So once you understand all that, they really don't care how good the articles are. They really don't care how many people subscribe to the magazine, because here's one of the tricks they did. They send a copy of each magazine to libraries, and the library will put it on display for a couple months and then throw it out. So they put down the amount of subscribers. There's another word for it. Subscription. They have a number, and it comes out. It's published once a year in the magazine. And in other words, that's what they base their advertising rate on. So by them giving free magazines to hospitals and all that, that's where they get the most subscribers. Okay? That's how it works. Now, so I get stuff, I go to the second magazine, I produce another article, and it's the same guy, he owns that magazine too. And I call him up, and he sends me even less money. He goes, he says, it's a new name on the magazine, and you never wrote for us before. I'm like, excuse me? I said, you took the article, you published it. Oh, you sound unhappy. I said, the last time you didn't pay me enough money. So now he gives me more money. And the articles, I had multiple articles. And then I'm saying, you know what? I'm working my ass off on this stuff, and I'm getting paid less than minimum wage. So I sort of called somebody up, famous guy. He's in publishing. I talked to him, and he says, you're doing all the work. He says, how I make my money is they send me the chips, the parts, and the idea for the article. And all I have to do is put it together or turn it on and add a battery to it and do a review. And I go, you kidding? He goes, yeah, I make more money that way than what you're doing. You're doing all the hard work. All right, so now that's kind of bouncing around in my head. I start doing the moose loop antenna out of the back of a magazine. I was selling plans to build a moose loop antenna. It was an AM broadcast receiving antenna, box antenna, but it fit together with pieces of plywood with slots, and it all held together with gravity, and it looked like moose antlers, and the wires were ran between the moose antlers type of thing, and that I sold a few copies of that. All right, but I didn't quit. Now, I was cutting people's lawns. Now let's get this in the frame. I'm going to show you this because I really don't care about this anymore. Okay, it's sorted in the frame. Now, I'm cutting people's lawns, and I really want to be a writer or somebody making money other than mowing lawns, because I had all this electronic experience. And as I'm using the Echo Weed Whacker, I'm realizing it almost has enough air from the spinning nylon cord. It's nylon cord, but that's actually the blades, the nylon cord blades. It almost has enough air to clean the sidewalk off. So I'm figuring if you just add in some impellers or in some blades, it'll work. So that's when I come up with, what did I call it? Whack and blow? Gas weed whacker with blower. Whack and blow. Simplified drawing. Okay, now as you can see, these are receipts. Now, what you do in some companies, when you have an idea, this is years ago, they don't do this anymore. They had a development section, and this was John Deere. And they tell you, okay, this is how you have to do it. We'll look at your idea, but you got to do this. So down here on the bottom, there's my neighbor's signature. It had to be witnessed by a person that understand what this was by just looking at it. So my first shot was to go to that engineer. I had an engineer on my block, and I put this down in front of him. I let him read it. All right, he didn't understand what it was. So he says, "What's this for?" I said, "I need a witness." "Oh, I'll be your witness." "No, you don't understand. You have to be able to look at this page and read what's on this page." All right, gas weed whacker with blower, weed whacking weed, simplified drawing. He could read all this, and then he has to tell me what this is. He couldn't do it, so I had to leave. And he's like talking. I said, "Look," I said, "you failed." "Well, no, you failed." "Okay, I was told this is how I have to do this. You know, I have this is registered mail. You have to have a signature from a person. You have multiple copies." All right, so I come out of his house, and he's still talking out of his door of his house to me, and I'm like, boy, was that embarrassing. So I look across the street, and the kid across the street, he's home. He's worked night shift. And I walked over, and I put this on his kitchen table. I said, "Look at that and tell me what that is." And he knew right away what it was. He goes, "You come up with that?" I said, "Yep." I said, basically, I need your signature on this, if you understand what it is. And he explained it back to me. You know, this is a weed whacker. This is the line. This is the output of the air. And then as you're whacking, you can use this nozzle. It's seamless, okay, to blow off the sidewalk. So when you're done, you can go back across the sidewalk, or as you're going along, depending on how neat you are. And it would work with like an Echo weed whacker. Well, anyway, he knew. He became my witness. And the deal was, if John Deere took it over as one of their ideas, and I'd get a percentage, the whole thing. So it's going through all these committees at John Deere, and they send me a letter, "Would you like to come out and explain it in front of a group?" And I said, "Look," I said, "it's so straightforward. If you don't understand what it is by looking at it, I'm not coming out there." That's all it was. I was at the point, this is such a simple idea. I told the girl, I said, "The weed whacker almost blows stuff out of the way. You add those fins, it'll be seamless. The blower's there if you want to use the blower." I won't go into too much detail, but it went through all their committees. So I have here, I got to see if I can find it. I got so many rejections from companies. Okay, this is the famous John Deere letter. Now, why it's so famous is it's a Dear John letter. I believe it was actually Dear John. Ah, it's actually a Dear Mr. Kleinbauer. Okay. Well, anyway, they didn't want it. Okay. So I called the girl up in order to get this. Okay. And what the girl told me was they had a massive layoff. She says that whole department that you were trying to get the idea through and the whole thing, that's all gone. She says everything's going to Mexico. And she says basically this was her last week. But I then submitted this to a few other places, but they were all going the same route. In other words, they didn't have that department where someone from the outside would say, hey, look at this. Okay? You have to do it a different way. But back in the old days, okay, you could actually send them something like this, registered mail, after they said you could, and a witness. And they would look it over, and it goes through a committee, and the committee looks it over. And basically, the committee could figure out how to redo it. Now, one of the companies I dealt with for a short period of time, they come out with this unit without the string that plugs into the weed whacker. In other words, you disconnect the bottom lower unit, and you just have the blower. So it's like an attachment. So one of the guys I told the story to, a guy I used to buy my dungarees from, he comes running up a street one day. He sees me. He stole your idea, and he kept the thing, the ad for like Home Depot in his wallet. And he opens up. He goes, "Look, that's your idea." I go, "Yeah." I said, "But they did it in a different way." And I said, at that point, I don't have the money to fight it, and it just wasn't worth it. But since then, nobody has put a blower in the weed whacker. Okay, that's what I was amazed at. You know, enough people knew about it when I did it, and it didn't. So right after this, now this is 1998. Right after this, some other guy said, "Go down and see your guy you grew up with. He's having a problem with a Bridgeport." And I went down there and I fixed the Bridgeport, and I got involved, and it was a CNC Bridgeport. And I come home and I started building CNC machines that you could build at home out of stuff you get at the hardware store. And that's my website's still there. It's called crankorgan.com. The other adventure was, you can look at one of my videos. I show you some of my CNC machines coming apart. I also show you the crank organ. Okay, that's where the name of the website came. And the real aficionados, they're not really a crank organ. Don't call it a monkey organ. You go through the same thing no matter what you get into. Now, this was totally different. Now, this is seamless. In other words, this is a weed whacker, and then there's a nozzle on it that's shooting air out. And you put the nozzle in such a place that the person weed whacking doesn't even know that nozzle is shooting air out, because it's helping the grass move forward as he's weed whacking. Okay? And then if he does want to blow the sidewalk off or redirect the clippings to the street, he can do that. Okay? And I'm a seamless guy. Even with the radios that I redo, the command radios, the BC348, I make it so I undo a couple bolts, power supply comes out, the radio is original. That's how I think. I don't get out the power drill and drill a big hole in the front of the radio, not thinking how to lay it out, put in a SWR meter or a S meter, and then realize it's too big, and then put another. I've seen stuff on YouTube that I'm looking at, I'm like, was this guy drunk? Okay, I put too much thought into everything, but I just wanted to show you what I've done. And the CNC thing was even bigger, but I didn't document it. I always told everybody that the biggest thing with the CNC is I've had kept notes of all the crazy stuff that people tell you. Like this one guy wanted to cut paraglider propellers with a 4 foot by 4 foot CNC machine, homemade. And then when I asked him, what do those propellers cost? And he says $80. And I'm like, you're out of your freaking mind. The propeller that he's saying is $80. Whether it's used or not, is certified. It's a real propeller. But this guy was bothering me for days. Another one wanted to make propellers out of titanium. Or I take it back. It weren't propellers. They were, from jet engines. Oh, the thing that spins in the jet engine. Well, anyway, he was so delusional. He wanted to cut those out of titanium. And what the hell is that thing called? It's not an impeller. Oh, anyway, the thing that spins in the jet engine has to be so perfectly balanced. And I said it to him. He goes, "You don't know what you're talking about." And then the other guy he gives me the voltages to a stepping motor. He doesn't tell me what brand, and he tells me, "I want you to tell me how much power the motor has. I mean torque." And at that time I spelled torque wrong, and he got all upset with me. And I said, "There's new stepping motors that use rare earth magnets, and there's older ones, and the older ones don't have as much holding torque as the new ones." But that wasn't in his reality. Okay, so the CNC thing, I put 20 years into that. 20 years of arguing with people that didn't know what they were talking about. All right, but that's how I got into it. Wouldn't do book reports. Did a text file on how to add a second hard drive. Went on to doing the quick and dirty data interface, the crank organ. It just kept coming and coming and coming. And I didn't make any money on any of the stuff, but it was an adventure. And when I look back on it, it wasn't any fun. But I just want to show you some of the stuff. Some of the stuff I showed you on my older videos that I took down. I'm trying to combine some of these videos just so you get an idea what I went through. And like I said, if you want to be a writer, the first thing you do is you contact the place and ask for a writer's kit. And that's the buzzword. And that means you've gotten something and you're ready to submit it to them. And that'll click their gears, their chain, and they might come back. We're not taking submissions at this time. It can go so many different ways. It's different than when I did it, okay? Because nobody gets magazines through the mail anymore. It all comes online, so it could all be different. You might have to do the writer's kit from their website. You might get it through the website and blah, blah, blah. It's all going to be slightly different. But that's the thing. You have to hit them with the buzzword, and that basically tells them you're almost there, and then they're willing to work with you. You know, you get wackadoodles that play make-believe. Well, I'm thinking about writing a novel. I had people bothering me as I'm writing stuff. They're coming up to me. Someone said, "You're a writer." I said, "Well, I write booklets on how to build things." "Well, I'm thinking about writing this book about my dog." And you're standing there going, "Okay, count to 10, look at your watch and tell them, man, I gotta go." And that's what I would do. Okay? People play make-believe. That's another thing you'll learn. If you get involved with the public, my friend calls them operators. They operate trains, but they really don't have any trains. But it's all make-believe. It's all an illusion. Okay, I think that's it. All right, that's it.